News broke recently that the Boy Scouts of America is changing its name to Scouting America. Well, the name change to Scouting America is going to take effect on February 8, 2025, which is the organization's 115th anniversary. According to the Associated Press, the Boy Scouts will become Scouting America in an effort to emphasize inclusion as it works to move past the turmoil of bankruptcy and a flood of sexual abuse claims. I am here today to introduce you to a very good friend of mine, Mark Hancock, who is the CEO of Trail Life USA. And these guys are doing an incredible job helping young boys become godly men. It's a wonderful alternative to the Boy Scouts of America, and I think you're going to love this conversation. This is the Heidi St. John podcast. Stick around. I think you're going to be encouraged. So, Mark, welcome to the podcast. I'm glad you're here.
Thanks. It's great to be here, Heidi.
So let's just jump right into the deep end here, because I've been talking about this for a long time on my show. The culture is on its head right now in so many different ways, and people are frustrated, I think, at looking at institutions, as we just talked about in the intro, one of them being one of the great institutions of the United States, or used to be, the Boy Scouts of America. Now they're completely woke. And the news broke recently that they're changing their name to Scouting America, because that's going to help, right? Because that's going to help. So the name Scouting America is going to take effect right in February of February of next year, so February of 2025. And what an amazing time for Trail Life to be able to step into the void and give parents who are looking for that alternative a really good Christ-centered alternative to the Boy Scouts of America. Tell us a little bit about your history, how you got involved with Trail Life, and where you think you can fit in now that this has been broken so wide open for you.
Yeah, well, I'd love to talk about that. Trail Life is my passion, the work that we're doing here, and I like talking about me too. I'm really interested in me. So,
I'm interested.
About 10 years ago, the Boy Scouts of America kind of began this journey towards abandoning some of the more traditional values. And about 300 volunteers across the country got together and said, hey, this is a problem. Churches aren't going to be able to charter Boy Scout troops. And after 100 years of giving us presidents and astronauts and senators and world leaders and great men, they have decided that that's not what they want to do, or that's not what they're so interested in anymore. And so these volunteers got together. Someone needs to do something about it. And the idea of Trail Life began actually in June of 2013. 50 of us gathered in Louisville, Kentucky. And then 68 days later, we gathered in Nashville and had an inaugural convention. Had 1,200 people come from 44 states. That's 68 days later, from nothing to having a convention. Governor Mike Huckabee was our keynoter, and Dr. Michael Ferris spoke there, and it was just a great gathering. And 3 months later, we launched on January 1st, 2014. And since then, we've grown to almost 60,000 members. We're in all 50 states. About 1,200 churches have troops and Trail Life USA. And it's everything that you would expect from an outdoor organization for boys, and camping and hiking and uniforms and handbooks and badges, a robust awards program, and all that stuff. But the two big differences between us and Boy Scouts, or what was formerly known as Boy Scouts, is we are Christ-centered. We're unapologetically Christian. We're not just an outdoor organization that's kind of having a Christian experience. We are at our core a Christian ministry that uses the outdoors to turn boys into godly men. And the second thing, we're boy-focused. And I hope I can say this on your program, Heidi. We believe that boys and girls are different, and that they need programs that are aimed specifically at them, at the strengths of them. And in our culture today, that's just disappearing. This idea that girls are these wonderful, individual, marvelous creatures who deserve programs and ideas focused on them. And the same is true for boys. And so that's why Trail Life USA is especially important, because Boy Scouts just continues to make these decisions to discount the marvel, the wonder, the differences, the value in both genders. And it's kind of frustrating to watch, but it's also created this beautiful place for Trail Life to step in and say, hey, Boy Scouts has been wonderful in terms of character, but they have lacked the moral Christian foundation that's essential for creating good and godly character.
Yeah, it's really true. And boys are under attack in the culture right now. And, I've been to several conventions this past season where you have also been, and I've listened to you talk about this many times about how it's so heartbreaking to watch what is happening with our young boys in the culture right now as they've been marginalized, pushed to the corners of the culture. Obviously, the focus has been for many, many years, and it started, I think, rightly so, the women's suffrage movement. Women were like, hey, can we vote? That be okay, And then that moved to the radical feminist movement, which is injuring women, absolutely injuring women, and it is also injuring boys and men. What are you seeing that the cultural impact that this push toward feminism has had on our young boys?
Yeah, it's hard to talk about because I love the fact that we've learned the value of women. And certainly there are some things that needed to be righted. And in the 90s, when we saw that girls and women were lacking and were behind in science and technology, the STEM subjects, and we did something to help lift them up. But what we ignored at that time is the fact that boys were behind in language and social skills. We didn't do anything to compensate for them, but we created these programs and really this educational system that favors sit still, be quiet, pay attention, which girls are wired for. Boys are wired for motion. Harvard scientists will tell you that boys need to be moving in order for the brain to be engaged. So, your mom's are sitting at home and you're eating dinner and the silverware is rattling because your son's leg is going down. He's saying to you, if you want me here, if you want me paying attention, if you want my brain, you got to take my body. But in a classroom, that looks like he can't sit still. Why can't you sit still like Susie? So these messages over the years have caused great harm to boys, and that's just one of them there. That why can't you sit still like Susie? That approach to boys, and it's created this environment now where boys are twice as likely to be in special education, 3 times more likely to have ADHD. They're behind in every single academic category. Now there's more girls going to college than boys, and boys are leading in suicide rates, 10 to 14-year-old, fastest growing demographic. So it's really something, what we've seen happen to specifically boys, like the canaries in the coal mine of this culture that's trying to figure out who it is. And the boys are the ones who are falling off their perches. And they're telling us there's something wrong here and we've got to pay attention to it. Really tragic what it is that's happened to boys over the last few generations.
Yeah. It is, and I think as you and I were discussing a few minutes ago in the pre-show, I'm wondering if there isn't a tipping point in the culture, if we're reaching sort of a tipping point. And I think it's organizations like yours that are sounding the alarm and saying, hey, boys and girls are different. And boys and girls need different things. And in fact, there are 2 separate scouting organizations, right? One for boys and one for girls. Why is it necessary? Someone asked me this the other day, because here at Firmly Planted, we have a Trail Life group here, which we're very excited about. And we also have American Heritage Girls. They're different. Why is it important that there are 2 different scouting organizations, one for boys and one for girls? Because this is kind of the argument that the Boy Scouts of America is making. They're just like, we'll just do the same thing for the boys and the girls. And then I'm going to get to the name change, because I know you got something to say about that.
Yeah, well, they just are. Boys and girls just are different. Every legitimate science points to that. Biologically, chemically, psychologically, developmentally, boys and girls are different. In the womb, they're behaving different. It's not like when they're born, then we tell them, okay, you're going to like this and you're not going to like this because this is what you're. There is some social construction going on there, because we do take the strengths of that gender and build upon them, but they don't learn all these things. That they're born with a lot of these things, and there's a bell curve. There's certainly boys that may have some tendencies towards things that would be typically associated with girls, and the opposite. But in general, and scientifically, boys and girls are different, and we just need to pay attention to that. Their eyes are different, their ears are different, their brains are different. Developmentally, boys develop more slowly than girls. So in a school situation, the girls get off to a fast start. We're finding that boys just are not catching up anymore. Boys used to, at some point, developmentally, when their brains were finally at a point that they could learn as quickly as girls, they would actually surpass girls. And it used to be that in the junior high and high school age, boys were the smart ones. But what we're running into now, they've already given up by then. They've already decided, I don't fit here. The system's not built for me. I don't belong here. I'm just going to get through this. And as soon as I get my degree, college, seriously? No, thank you. I've had enough. It's really tragic what's happened in that space, and we just continue to reinforce that with subtle messaging. But you do talk about other things going in the culture like trail life. And we love that. And I believe that there is a remnant that's rising. I think that there are people who are beginning to wake up to this idea. It's like, wait a minute, we've been thinking kind of crazy. We keep fighting these developmental truths and thinking that we can change them through messaging or whatever, or
right.
through shaming. But the truth is, boys are still finding their way. I've heard about what they're referring to this generation as a tool belt generation, because what they're doing, they're going to work, they're avoiding college, but they've figured out a way to find success. Boys have found a place, and they will. They're resilient. They'll figure it out. And so they say, I can go be successful over here. I can put on a tool belt, and I can work, and I can be successful. I can support a family. I can feel good about what it is I do. But we didn't create that space for them. They found it themselves. They said, I have to go find somewhere where I can be purposeful and where people will let me just be who I am. And so remarkable resilience, which is really encouraging. But we're still in a culture that feels like it's just turned against boys. Mm-hmm. But the message I'm always telling men, please don't be shamed by a culture that doesn't believe in you. The father is still the most influential voice in the life of his son.
Absolutely.
In spite of everything the culture, it's this incredible competition for the heart of that boy. But Dad, you still have the edge. You still have the true key and you're still in the most advantageous position to make it. Don't cede that ground. Because you've got it. You own that. Don't cede that ground. You don't have to win it back. You've got it, and you have to maintain it. So don't give up, and that's what's encouraging us. And we see, we've got over 20,000 adult volunteers in our program now, Heidi, and many of them are men that don't have a son in the program. But they are so convicted about the next generation, like, I'm going to go do something for boys. Mm-hmm. And they're joining Trail Life, and then of course they're finding their band of brothers, and they find this tribe of men who share their values, and so they end up just loving being there. But they're there with a purpose and a mission, because men and boys will find a way to be helpful. We don't necessarily have to create programs for them. We just have to give them room to find out how it is they can be helpful. And men are finding that in Trail Life USA.
I'm wondering, if someone's interested in signing their boy up for a Trail Life troop, and the dads are listening to this podcast going, is that something I could do with my son? Is that something that you guys encourage? Can fathers do this with their sons? What does it look like? Talk to the parents who are listening to this right now who are like, I'm gonna check that out, and then they go to get information. What are they gonna find?
Yeah, well, It's really this magical kind of thing, this design that God put into Trail Life that we didn't know was there, but that we've discovered His intention in this program. And we started out thinking, okay, this is a ministry for boys, but we discovered, and this is kind of the best secret, it's really a ministry for men.
Yeah.
Men find their brotherhood there, and they're able to be in ministry, modeling for the next generation what it means to be a godly man. So we send men to conferences, or send them to Bible studies, or send them to small groups, or these kind of things, and say, hey, God is calling you to something big. And then they show up at church, and it's like, okay, I'm here, what can I do? And it's like, well, help us park cars, which is great. Churches need people to help park cars, but he's feeling like there's something bigger in his heart. Mm-hmm. So we do have a place, we are a place where men can go and can find purpose and ministry and mission. I remember being in Texas at a Q&A session with Trail Life leaders, and this guy, it was his first time at a Trail Life event, and he's sitting in the front row, and he started to scratch his head, and he raised his hand, he said, listen, he said, are you saying I'm in ministry?
Yes.
I'm like, yes, you got it. That's what this is. So we're ministry men, but of course there's the boys who are getting the value of being around those godly men. The father-son, the son and the dad joining together is a powerful way for dad to connect. And the other thing is single moms are putting in their sons in the program, because it's like, I need some godly men around my son. I need my son to find, there's a lot of things I can do for him, because I'm a single mom is killing it. I mean, a whole family together do that. She's doing a Herculean task there, but she needs and she wants men to surround her son. Out in California, we had a young man. He earned our Horizon Award, which is near the top of the award. And he stood in front of that troop gathering when he got the award, and his mom's sitting there in the room. And he says, his single mom is sitting there in the room. And he says, I need to thank the men in this room. You taught me how to shave, and you taught me how to love Jesus. Wow. And I thought, they nailed it. And if you can imagine being that single mom who's like, man, those are things I couldn't have done. Mm-hmm. I could show them how I love Jesus, but I couldn't show them how a man loves Jesus in this culture. And I could have taught him how to shave, but what the power of those men who come alongside and say, listen, this is how to shave. This is how to do this. And so you've got the father and son. You've got the boy without a dad. You got the man who's looking for a brotherhood and a tribe, in something to do that's purposeful for God. You got the single mom who's cried out to God for somebody to help her raise her son. All these streams come together in the place of Trail Life USA.
It's amazing. And what an amazing time to have an organization like Trail Life USA coming in and filling the hole, because there is such a void in the culture right now where men have been maligned. I mean, this started a long time ago. I was just at a conference in Washington, D.C. and sitting on a panel taking questions from the audience, and we were talking about the right to life and why it's so important that we stand in defense of the unborn. And this man who was sitting in the front row asked a question. He said, I understand that really anything a man can do, a woman can do. And I really don't feel like I have a voice. And I stopped in mid-sentence and I was like, wow, I just want to wash that off of you in Jesus' name. Because first of all, it simply isn't true. Godly women especially, desperately need, godly men to again begin to lead in the culture, to learn to take the place of leadership that God has anointed and called them to do and to be leaders. And as I spoke to him later, he came up to my table later and we were talking a little bit about kind of where his background and where that came from. And he basically was just raised in a very feminist environment where men had been shamed. And as a young boy, he said, I just did not know my place. And I felt like I'm just, like growing up, he said, I felt like I grew up on like the Wonder Woman island, like I'm the boy that all the women are like, what are we going to do with him? Well, we don't know. And so we actually started talking about what it would look like to raise a generation of young boys who were proud of the fact that God had made them to be men.
Yeah.
And there's something special about it. And that is part of what Trail Life is doing, I think, is just encouraging these boys. Listen, you are unique and God has a place for you in the culture. And not only does he have a place, and not only are you unique, your voice is desperately needed at this time in history. It's an amazing opportunity.
It really is. I remember coming home from a camping trip with my sons when they were still at home and we were active in Trail Life. And we got to the front door, my wife opened the door to greet us. It was just the four of us, so the three men had been gone for the weekend. And she said, when you come home, you're smellier, but you're taller.
Oh,
and I thought, wow. And there's something that happens in the company of men because there's so much subtle shaming everywhere that boys go. Some of it's subtle and some of it's just outright.
Yes.
But that shaming, and here they were a weekend with men and with boys reminded of who they were, and their spines straightened and they stood taller. They were reminded of who it is that they are without having to live up to some kind of why can't you do X like Susie. It was like, no, I'm with my people. You know, we're gonna climb trees. We're gonna be a little bit crazy. We're gonna celebrate boogers. We're gonna beat us out here. And so it's just a beautiful thing to see happen.
Well, I have two boys of my own who are both wonderful men now, and soon to have 4 grandsons. Our 4th grandson is due in just a couple of weeks. And I've been watching as my husband is mentoring these our grandsons, and just watching my daughters become mothers. And there's something very, very precious about speaking into the lives of these boys and bringing them up from a Christian worldview. That is something you touched on it a little bit ago, but I want to touch on it again because it goes to why I have been telling people now for a long time here at the show, get your kids out of the Boy Scouts. It's not what you think it is, and we're actually hurting our young boys when we keep them in programs like this. And I want to touch on it for a second. The first question I have is address the concern, or people will say, listen, it's just a scouting organization. It doesn't matter. We're teaching these kids about, hunting and fishing and hiking and how to tie a knot and all the things. Why does it matter that it's taught from a biblical worldview? What's your answer to that? Why does it matter that we participate in an organization that holds Christ at the center?
Yeah. Well, the teaching from a biblical worldview model, which is what we do, Christian worldview is integrated through everything we do, actually isn't the most powerful part of the Christian aspect of our program. The most powerful part is to be in the company of men whose character
it's good.
is being used by God to model the next generation. So I tell parents all the time, if you're going to put your kid in sports, don't choose the soccer team because they have a winning schedule. Choose a soccer team because that coach and the other families on that team share your values.
Oh, that's good.
Because your son can learn to be a better soccer player somewhere, but he is going to adopt the values of that group, of that culture that you put him in. Mm-hmm. So you may get a better soccer player because he gathered those skills, but he's also going to gather the values. And so he's going to become a person that doesn't share your values because he's adopted the ones of the culture that you put him in. Mm-hmm. So the choice you make, where you're going to put your son, isn't who's delivering the best program. Although Trail has an exceptional program. But don't make your decision based on that. Who is surrounding my son or my daughter with the types of values that I want them to follow after? Because that's the lesson that's happened. That's the true powerful lesson. It isn't what they're learning. Listen, we focus on adventure, character, and leadership. And we say all the time, boys come for the adventure. Parents are putting them in there for the character and the leadership. And so if you only want adventure, there's probably people who do adventure different than we do, who you might prefer. I can't think of any, but if you're after character and leadership, you have to make decisions based on the values of the organization, not necessarily the curriculum or what it is that they're teaching. Mm-hmm. Although, again, our curriculum is full of Christian values. But it really is the sense of what boys are picking up in the environment, who you are surrounding them with. Mm-hmm. And that's the danger in Boy Scouts, is that there are plenty of good men still in Boy Scouts. We have good Christian men. They'll come to us and say, listen, I don't agree with the values, but God has me there for those boys. I said, that's great, but don't bring your boys there.
You just made the case for why I tell parents to get their kids out of public school. It's the same thing, right? Yeah. Do we need Christian teachers in the public schools? Absolutely, but they're no place for children that we're trying to bring up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. It's the same thing. Jesus said in Luke 6:40 that when a student is trained, he'll be like his teacher.
Yeah.
Well, then it matters who's teaching your children.
Absolutely. My wife and I were involved in homeless ministry. In fact, we courted each other on the streets, passing out sandwiches to homeless people. And I would go into bars and things like that to minister to people, to go in there and find, because that's where you find broken people. But I wouldn't take my sons in there.
Right.
So you say, I'm called. We shouldn't ignore those broken people. That's fine, but don't take your boys in there because they will adopt the values, and that makes sense for us. I'm not going to bring my son into that bar to witness. I'm going to bring the son into that strip club, to witness. But I can take him into Boy Scouts. Now the values in there are not what you want your kids to be around. So you can be sent there, but don't take your kids there, and you're not abandoning some sort of call. If he has called you to those dark places, then by all means go there. But please don't take your kids.
No, absolutely not. And I feel so strongly about this Why would you want to put your kid into a cesspool to swim to the other side to get a mediocre experience and a mediocre education? It matters the environment that our kids are in. It matters who's teaching them. It matters the worldview that they're coming from. When a student is fully trained, he'll be like his teacher. We saw now several weeks ago that the Boy Scouts decided to change their name to Scouting America, which, for people like me who've been watching the organization circling the drain now for quite some time, I wasn't that surprised. And yet it still was a little bit shocking. I'm like, you guys are, super tone deaf. What was your initial reaction? Because I would imagine this would have hit you, pretty hard. What was your initial reaction after you learned that the Boy Scouts were going to change their name to Scouting America?
Yeah, well, it was mixed because part of it was unexpected for us. Our second staff member was a former general counsel for Boy Scouts of America and was fired over his conservative views. And so we hired him immediately at Trail Life because we learned a lot from what it is that they had done wrong. And he predicted, when he left them, this is what he got fired over. He says, if you make this decision, you'll have to make this one. You'll have to make this one.
Yep.
And he walked out every decision that, about every 2 years, Boy Scouts takes another big step towards wokeness.
Yep.
And he predicted every single one of them, except for this one. And so we were surprised. But at the same time, I'm scratching my head like, that makes sense. Well, what they're saying is they've been saying in many different ways.
Yeah, now their name just reflects who they are.
Exactly. So it's actually honest of them, but it's and it also more accurately expresses who they are, which is an organization saying, we're taking your name out of the organization, and we don't care if that bothers you. And we don't care if you don't have a place with your name on it to go to. And because we have some other motives. In fact, what their CEO said is, my number one objective, Heidi, number one, at the top, my number one objective, he said, is to get more people in this program.
Yeah. And I have a feeling it's going to backfire.
I thought, oh my gosh. I said, okay, you're being honest.
Yeah.
My number one objective as CEO of this organization is to build boys into godly men.
Come on.
I'm focused on them. You can be focused on you. You can be focused on the size of your organization. You can be focused on your income. You can be focused on that. I'm focused on those that are the focus of our ministry. That's what I'm focused on. That's what we're focused on. So they're being more clearly who it is that they are. But you're exactly right. They're having the opposite effect.
Yeah.
Since 2018, they've lost over 1 million boys, half their membership.
Yeah.
And in that same period of time, Heidi, they've gained 176,000 girls. So if you see that trajectory, you're looking at an organization that only in a matter of years will have more girls than boys.
Well, they won't even tell you they don't even know what a girl is.
No.
Right? Because they've stepped into this
right.
sort of murky waters of transgenderism, and they're just saying, hey, you can be whatever you decide to be, whatever you think you are in your head, which is, of course, is mixed up and upside down and backward. But I loved what you wrote, and I'm going to read it because I thought it was so good. When you heard about this change, you said, we're saddened by the Scouts' continued challenge to the truth that boys and girls are different and deserve different programs. Trail Life USA remains committed to recognizing the unique design of boys through our proven process that is growing them into godly men. Organizations like the Boy Scouts that previously upheld the uniqueness and wonder of boyhood have abandoned the male-centric environment that for centuries was the key to awakening the hearts of boys and men, as together they experienced adventure, nurtured faith, and grew to become the men that God called them to be. Mark, that'll preach. That'll preach. It was such a beautiful way to say, listen, that was then, this is now. Boys remain the focus of Trail Life USA, and they need that space, and they need to be honored as the unique creations that God made them to be, because they're living in a time right now where we hear about toxic masculinity. I watched when several years ago I was walking out of the post office in my little town. And a gentleman right in front of me had opened the door for a woman who was carrying, big boxes coming in. And she yelled at him. She was like, you know what? I don't need you to open the door for me. It's men like you, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, the look on his face, I could not believe it. And I was right behind her and I was like, hold up. Because I was actually hoping you'd hold the door open for me. I appreciate it. And
Sure.
and there has been such a shift and a demonization of men at a time when we desperately need them. We desperately need godly men in the culture. And I'm wondering, are you seeing as people are coming, and we're seeing this in the homeschool movement, right? We have 1,200 students at Firmly Planted right now, and parents are coming here and they're like, okay, we've had enough. Like, we're done. Are you seeing that now? I mean, I would imagine that as the Boy Scouts moves farther and farther away from its core mission and from the tenets that made it a great organization, Trail Life is going to continue to see an influx of families that are looking for organizations who will help their boys become men.
Yeah, every time the Boy Scouts makes one of these decisions, then we do have an influx and grow a big jump in our membership. So people are saying, okay, I recognize that there's something different here. But we have a lot of churches that are chartering Trail Life troops that never chartered a Boy Scout troop. Because we just don't meet in the basement of the church. We are an outreach of that local church. We are integrated in that local church. It's not just, hey, some group meets in the basement. We have a real connection with the church. We believe the church is plan A for God, and we want to be in on that. And this is a crazy thing. We've uncovered that 18% of our troop members join that local church after joining the troop. So we're an outreach for that local church. We have a great partnership with that local church and building that local church. That's a huge difference between us and Boy Scouts because we share the values of the church. There are now dozens and perhaps hundreds of churches that we turn away every year because they don't align with our values, and it's tragic that we have to say to churches, no, you're not as biblical as we are.
Yeah.
And we have our statement of faith, a Trinitarian statement of faith, and then we also have our statement of values that talks about things like the definitions of marriage. One man, one woman, talks about biological males and biological females. And some churches aren't acknowledging those differences.
It's amazing.
We simply can't. We can't put our sons in that environment where people are confused about.
Well, and just for the reason that you just pointed out, when you put the seal of approval, if Trail Life goes into a church, it says to the members of that church that not only does this church care about helping young boys become godly men and fostering those relationships throughout the life of these boys, but they meet a certain criteria that makes them gospel-centered and are able to stand on truth. And so really it is a beautiful partnership and kind of lets people know this is the church that is solid, that's going to stand on the truth of the Word of God. How do you know? Well, part of the reason you know right off the top of your head is because you saw the Trail Life emblem out front of their church. Right? We've got a scouting group here, and that lets them know, these parents who are looking, this is a safe place for our boys.
Yeah. We have a proven process for growing boys into godly men, and it's dependent on certain truths that are Bible based. And we actually guarantee the churches. This is crazy. I was a youth pastor for 15 years. I could never make this guarantee. But we have a guarantee to our churches. If you charter a Trail Life troop and the boys in that troop are not becoming godly men, you get your money back.
Wow.
I couldn't do that as a youth pastor, but like I said, you get your money back because we have this proven process. We know that it works.
Yeah.
But it's essential that the Word of God and the principles behind the Word of God and things like the value of a male-centric environment and the difference between boys and girls and men and women and the power of a family and a marriage and one man, one woman, those are essential to making that guarantee work. So we can't put a Trail Life troop in a church that doesn't agree with us because we wouldn't be able to keep our guarantee because it's just confusing for boys. For the Trail Life program to be talking about how valuable they are as a boy and what a special creation of God they are, and they're different than girls and they're unique. It's not a value statement. You're just different than girls. And then having the church, that is our umbrella organization, telling them something different.
Right.
We don't want to conflict with that. We don't want to create that kind of confusion. There's enough confusion for boys today. So we're solid, and we understand that it slows our growth. But we're not about our growth. Remember, we're about growing boys into godly men, and we just can't do it in a church that doesn't align with those values.
Man, I'm so, it's thrilling for me. You know, my husband, as you know, was a pastor for 20 years, and we have watched the church really, it's amazing. I mean, you walk anywhere, you know, in my neck of the woods, in the Portland metropolitan area, or even here in Vancouver, Washington, and you got churches, you know, when I put the church in air quotes, right? Churches that are flying the transgender flag, and they're, I mean, obviously not adhering to scripture, and it matters. It matters now more than it's ever mattered. One thing that's really cool, I think, about what you guys are doing is that you're also creating resources. So beyond the scouting program, which is phenomenal, and like I said, if anyone is listening to this and you're in the Vancouver area, we've got a trail life group here, just started, and it's already growing really rapidly. So we're very excited. My brother-in-law is actually leading it. He's a retired Army and just an incredible human being. And so he's taken the lead for that, and he's got 2 of his boys in trail life with him, and it's just been a delight for me to watch that. But you guys you're also releasing resources. You were just showing me before we started, you got a couple of books, and one of them's called Trail Ready. Tell me about that.
Yeah, we released this for Father's Day, and it's called Trail Ready. It's 101 devotions for fathers of boys. So, and it's not necessarily for dads to do with their sons, but it speaks specifically to the heart of a dad who has a boy in his household, because there's so little instruction on, and it's not really instruction, I shouldn't use it that way. There's so much shaming, even in ministry circles. What we want to tell men is, oh, well, you're not leading family devotions. You're not leading family worship.
It's so
you're not
true.
reading your Bible enough. You're not praying enough. You're not dating your wife enough. You're not, and all these things, this message that men get that say, God, give me a break. I'm a horrible failure. And what this book does, what Trail Ready does, is it reminds men of who it is that they are. Like I said earlier, that they are the most powerful voice in the life of their son. So these are specific devotions written with that in mind. And so the devotion is on one page, and then on the other page is a day hike from every state. There's 2 from every state. So you can read about a day hike, and we've had folks send in pictures of father, son with a devotional at the spot of that hike, saying, hey, we saw the hike in the book, and we went out and we did it today. And I just love that. So it's
awesome.
It's you don't got to be a big outdoor guy to have interest in the outdoors, or a day hike, or taking your family on a hike and things like that. So that's why it's called Trail Ready, because you're taking it on the trail. And so we're getting really good feedback from folks. That's on Amazon or in our Trail Life USA store.
Well, I was just thinking we need to get that over here in the Friendly Planet bookstore, so that when families come back for the fall, we've got it here. I'll have to talk to you about that. And I love that you rightly pointed out the pressure that's on fathers and men in marriage, and even in Christian homes who are feeling like I don't measure up. And we've made, someone told me I had to be the priest of my home. I just did a whole podcast on this a couple of months ago with a wonderful guest. And he was trying to say, too, to these dads, listen, you're making it harder than it needs to be. God's already equipped you to lead your family. And I love that you're stepping into that space. And I wonder, too, so that was the first resource that you showed me, but then there was another one. And I don't think I got information about it ahead of time. So tell me a little bit about that, because I was excited about that one.
Well, you may not have heard anything, because it just came out a week ago. It's called
That's why. Okay, there. Now I don't feel so bad.
Yeah, it's Flight of the Falcon. It's the first in our series of the Falcon's Quest, and it's fiction for boys, which is hard to find. Yes. Good character adventure fiction for boys, and I partner with Brian Davis, who's an amazing writer. I've known him for years. He was my son's favorite author, so it's crazy to be co-authoring a book with Brian. But it's an adventure story about a 12-year-old boy named Dylan, and boys will just love the story.
I love it. And where can people get that? Just Amazon?
That's Amazon right now. It will be offered in the Trail Life store, but right now it's just available on Amazon.
I love it. Give us the name one more time, because again, it's not in my notes.
Flight of the Falcon.
Oh, that's a great title, Flight of the Falcon. I love it. I'm expecting there'll be more to follow. It's just fun to see what you guys are doing, and the encouragement that is so desperately needed in the culture right now. I want to wrap it up by just talking to dads today, because it's such a delight for me to have you here, and you're an inspiration to fathers all over the country. Why is it so important that fathers seek to and purpose to raise godly men. Why does it matter so much?
Well, I can tell you this. It matters to our enemy. It matters to those who want to see the impact of Christian principles on our society lost. From the beginning, it's been the design of God for family. He's our Father. He's Father God. He's not Captain God, President God, CEO God, General God, Lieutenant God. He is our Father God. That's His design. And when we understand that family is His design, we can also understand why there's such an attack against family. And if we want to get at the next generation, or if we want to destroy families, and we're really willing to be patient, then we go after boys. And so, dads, it's critical for you to be who God created you to be. I don't want to shame you with this. I want to remind you that God created you to be the most powerful, influential voice in the life of your family. And it's critical for us to move forward to maintain and to rebuild, perhaps, the strength of the nuclear family. The dad is key, and the dad is equipped, and the dad is anointed. The dad is designed to help bring that about. So I'm going to encourage you, men. You've got what it takes. Don't let that be taken away from you, and don't be discouraged. There's a remnant that's rising, and I believe that we're not just protecting those in our care. I think we are preparing them to turn back that tide. And so be encouraged. You're part of something really big.
Amen. So good. I'm going to end on another one of your quotes. I love this. You said Trail Life isn't just a Christian alternative to the Boy Scouts. It's an answer to the deep crisis affecting boys in America. And I think that's true. And as we call back the fathers to the hearts of their children again, I think we're going to see that renewal that you talked about. Mark Hancock, just been a delight to have you. Thanks for coming on the show today, and come back anytime. The headlines are just fast and furious. So anytime you want to talk to me about the headlines, I'd love to have you on. Thank you for what you're doing. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Heidi. You're making a difference. Hang in there. We love you guys.
Thank you, my friend. We'll talk soon. If you guys want more information on Trail Life USA, go to the show notes today. I will link back to that. And also we'll have a special link for those of you who are in my neck of the woods if you're interested in joining Trail Life here at Firmly Planted Family. Thank you guys so much for listening. Love your people well. And I will see you right back here again at the intersection of faith and